Just a day after the Iran-backed Houthi rebels entered the war, Israel's military said that it was intercepting missiles fired from Yemen. Houthi spokesperson Yahya Sarria said that the group fired a barrage of cruise missiles and drones targeting several vital and military sites in Israel in a second strike.
With Allah's help and reliance upon Allah, the Yemeni armed forces carried out the second military operation in the Holy Jihad battle with a barrage of cruise missiles and drones targeting several vital and military sites belonging to the Zionist enemy in southern occupied Palestine. This operation coincided with the military operations being carried out by our Mujahideen brothers in Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. And, by the grace of Allah, it successfully achieved its objectives.
Earlier, Houthis launched a missile attack towards southern Israel. Air raid sirens sounded in the city of Beersheba as Israeli defenses moved to intercept the threat. The IDF later said a ballistic missile fired from Yemen was successfully intercepted and that there were no injuries. Now, the intervention by Iran's Yemeni allies is raising concern about disruptions to Red Sea shipping lanes, already under pressure from the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The entry of the Houthis, who control Yemen's most populous areas, shows the spread of the conflict and poses a direct threat to the Bab al-Mandeb Strait at the southern end. The Bab al-Mandeb Strait lies between the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa, bordered by Yemen, Djibouti and Eritrea. Though only about 30 kilometers wide, this narrow passage is one of the world's most strategically vital maritime choke points. So far, Saudi Arabia has rerouted much of its oil exports from its Red Sea port of Yanbu to avoid the Strait of Hormuz, while it also operates Jeddah port and Jazan port. But with Houthis in the fray, there are fears that shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden can also come under attack. Now, the Houthis have previously fired drones and missiles towards Israel and attacked ships. All these attacks followed after Israel launched its war against Hamas in Gaza, post the October 7th massacre in Israel. The attacks prompted airstrikes by Israel and military operations by the United States against Houthi positions in Yemen. But with the Houthis now signaling a more direct role, attention is again turning to the Red Sea. As the war enters its fifth week, fears are growing of a wider military confrontation. All right, there's more to discuss in this as we get into the nuances of the war and whether the US will be able to find an off-ramp, as the US Vice President has already mentioned that they'll be out of there soon. Is that looking possible? To discuss this further with me, I'm now being joined by Colonel David B. DeRoche, live from Washington. He's a professor at Thayer Marshall Institute and former Deputy Director for Peacekeeping in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Colonel, thank you so much. Always a pleasure speaking with you. I would like to discuss this further with you. We've heard what the US Vice President has said. We'll be out of there soon. The US President doesn't want to be back in Iran for a while now. They want to be out of here. 4 to 5 weeks was the initial timeline. Looking at what week 5 looks like now, the Bab al-Mandeb Strait is also seeming to be getting engulfed in hostilities. The Houthis have entered the fray. There's a reported strike on a water source in Iran, and the last time that happened on a water desalination plant, Iran had vowed that they will go after similar attacks and similar targets across the Gulf. And we understand desalination plants are extremely critical to the entire population in the Gulf. Does this seem like a setting for the US to be exiting from this war soon?
No, I don't think so. I think that we probably will have another 2 to 3 weeks, maybe more. What we don't see is the cumulative effect. I mean, Iran is taking hundreds of airstrikes every night, but there's no independent media that operates in Iran. So we don't know what the effect of that is, but it's causing some cumulative damage. And we're hearing press reports that President Pezeshkian has said that the Iranian economy is on the verge of collapse within 2 weeks. So I think we're in one of these points where there's a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of wavering. But when military regimes fall, recall with Bashar al-Assad, it seems that things are going steady, 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 and then just a sudden collapse. Same thing with the Afghan government when it fell. But I don't think that President Trump wants to be in here in June. I think he wants it over before the summer. So we'll see.
You mentioned summer, Colonel. Is that also keeping in mind that the midterm elections are on the head? And at this point, let's quickly go over the objectives that were laid out in the beginning of the war. There was regime change that was initially, then the missile program, then the drone program, and then the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Strait of Hormuz was initially open. It got locked after the war started. Is there a possible off-ramp? Is Trump looking for a symbolic win to now exit? Is he looking, or is the US looking at the Iranian government to finally collapse financially? Because at this point, they really seem to be continuing with the fight. What is that symbolic win that the US will look for to finally find that off-ramp and get out?
Yeah. Well, first off, I don't think regime change was one of the military objectives of this campaign. It was the nuclear program, the missile program, support of proxies. The Strait of Hormuz became a priority when Iran started attacking neutral civilian shipping there. I think that that's something that's going to have to be dealt with. And but I think that he can, if they can restore civilian shipping and get the volume of missile fire down to 2 or 3 a day, or 5 or 6 a week, rather than right now we're seeing about 15 to 20 missiles launched every day. I think that probably would allow him to say, okay, we've contained this threat, and then let economic pressure do the job of regime change, which is Trump's preferred mode of doing business.
But is there a symbolic structure that they want to achieve at this point? Because Strait of Hormuz seems to be now the crucial point. Mm-hmm. Until that is released, they would want to continue with the fight. Does it seem that way?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that when Iran decided to start attacking neutral civilian shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, that was in part, I think, an effort to divert the bombing campaign away from the, what it was doing, targeting the regime security forces and the nuclear program, the missile program. So I think that is going to have to be dealt with, and I don't think that it would be acceptable for anybody if the United States and Israel stopped this campaign and left Iran in command of what are international waters and even Omani territorial waters, not Iranian waters. That would be an unacceptable result, and I think that fighting would resume very quickly if that were the case.
Also, Colonel, and I want to just come to you with this, and let's just look at the U.S. Foreign policy under Trump. Do you feel, and there is no denying the fact that Iran has taken a good amount of damage. Their military structure has been largely diminished, it's what it seems, and you can make out from the frequency of the missiles being launched per day. Nothing takes away from that. But just look at what the US foreign policy looks like at this point as we enter week 5 of this war. Japan and Australia, when we look more towards the Pacific side and the eastern side, they had initially said they do not want to enter. It rarely happens that there is a call from the US side and an ally or a partner nation would say, no, we do not want to get involved. We've seen and we've heard the kind of statements that Trump has put out to all NATO nations, saying, we'll remember this, that you didn't come to our aid. Then let's look at what's happening in the Gulf. There have been some statements targeted towards MBS, Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, and they're not seeming as respectful as that meeting in the White House was just a few months back. And there were also reports that the Gulf may be going over or revisiting their decision to invest in the US. And the China trip, which was initially scheduled for the end of March, going into April, that has been postponed to the 14th and 15th of May. Overall, if you look at it, and there is also, let me just quickly add, there are reports of negotiations going through Pakistan. Overall, do you find US foreign policy taking a big hit, regardless of how much military advances they've made in the war?
Well, I think the damage to U.S. foreign policy isn't necessarily from this war. It's from Donald Trump. I mean, when he took office, he picked a fight with Canada, of all people. That's that's like kicking a puppy. And then the whole Greenland fiasco with Denmark, which I still can't quite get my head around. So, I don't think many people like him, but I will take exception with one thing. I was in the Gulf for 3 weeks. I spent the first half of the war in the Gulf because I couldn't leave, and I talked with a lot of people there. And initially, they were irritated with the United States, saying, you started this war, you got us in. But as the Iranian attacks on civilian infrastructure stepped up, they said, oh my gosh, we are, whether we like it or not, Iran is a threat. Basically, Iran's actions, at least in the eye of our Gulf partners, have validated Trump's war aims. They said that Iran is a threat; they are threatening us, and our only option really is to get actually closer to the U.S. and to ensure that this country doesn't threaten us again. So, U.S. diplomacy has taken a hit since Donald Trump became president, but the actions, we're blessed by the, we don't have a monopoly on stupid. And I think the Iranian strikes on the Gulf states in particular was stupid, and it will rebound against them. But we have a lot of stupid.